Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Planet Soccer Podcast. Well, it's not morning anymore, but still kind of feels like it. We just crossed over into the afternoon here in Texas at the time of recording. I'm Reed. That's Dylan. Today we're talking Premier League. That's something we haven't talked about in a while. Really, we just don't talk about it much anymore because you guys just don't seem to like our conversations about it. But we're going to spice this one up a little bit, I think. I've got something at the end for Dylan that I think y'all will enjoy. If you make it to the end, I highly suggest you make it to the end. We would really enjoy that retention rate. So, Dylan, we recorded a Premier League episode. When was it? Saturday? No, Friday.
Yeah. Friday.
Yeah.
Friday. No, whatever. Friday or Saturday, whatever it was.
Sometime last week. And, yeah, it's just not applicable whatsoever anymore. We had some internet difficulties. I've changed locations back to my parents' house. The internet doesn't quite reach my area upstairs where I'm recording all the time, so I was missing like 2 minutes of video and audio, and it was an editing nightmare. But good thing we didn't release it actually, because the weekend games just threw everything out of the water. Both Dylan and I are sad in summary, but Dylan was less sad at the end of the day than I was, I think. So
yeah. I can always count on Spurs for a bottle job to revigorate my my feelings after a hard 7:30 a.m. match.
Yes, you can. Dylan, what's a couple things that stood out to you from this weekend's games?
Villa's the best team in Europe.
Yeah, Villa's the best team in the
world. No, but I think the thing that stuck out to me most wasn't even necessarily either of our team performances or that Champions League fight. It was more of what happened at the top of the table. Arsenal getting out to a big 2-0 lead in the first, 15 minutes, 20 minutes?
And it was like a 7th minute and then a 10th minute goal or something like that.
And then conceding 2 in the preceding, 75 minutes or whatever it would have been at that point. Meanwhile, Man City just absolutely taking care of business, as they have been doing. I joke that I think Villa is the best team in Europe right now. Realistically, I do think it is Man City. They're on another planet right now. They're dismantling of Bayern last week. I think I touched on it in our European recap that also doesn't seem to get as many views. So let us know in the comments why you don't like it as much. Well, if you're watching, you might still like it, so that might be a bad example. But I was pretty confident.
So many out there.
Yeah, it's a competition thing. But City's performance against Bayern kind of was the first indicator for me, and maybe I was late to the party on it, that I do think they're going to win the league. And this weekend just kind of reaffirmed that. Granted, the competition level, competition level is about the same between who City and Arsenal were both playing. Both had matches that they should have won handily. Man City did, and as we all know, Arsenal did not against West Ham. So that was kind of the number one thing for me, is it did fully validate those feelings I had that this is City's to lose now almost, which feels weird with a 4-point differential, but I would probably put it at 65% of me thinks City's going to win now. And going into the weekend, it was probably 50-50. So I do think it was a huge step forward for City and a pretty large step back for Arsenal.
Let's talk about Arsenal and West Ham a little bit, because they're two teams that we each do need to discuss, and they played each other. You kind of touched on Arsenal. They've had the league in hand for most of the season, and it's starting to feel like it might be a little bit of a bottle job for them. And I say that as a Spurs fan with my Spurs hat on, but, in reality, as a journalist, you look at it and it's like, okay, they're still young and they're ahead of schedule, and where they're at right now is they're here to stay. So if I was an Arsenal fan, one of those deluded Arsenal fans that you see on AFTV, just those idiots, actual idiots speaking on that media channel. One, the Premier League title is not more prestigious than winning the Champions League. Stop fooling yourselves. 2, you guys are right in saying that, even if you do bottle this and it would be a bottle job, you can't be like that upset because you hit a Man City team that signed Erling Haaland, signed Jack Grealish last year. They're both finally in form together. So it's kind of a perfect storm. I mean, it's not like Arsenal's losing games and they dropped 3 or 4. No,
Right.
like they're drawing games. They're dropping points to teams like West Ham, who, if you look at West Ham, they're really not that bad, even though they're bad. You know,
Right.
Declan Rice.
In our weekend,
Declan Rice, go ahead.
Yeah, in our weekend episode that we is lost to the universe. That's kind of like West Ham is one of the more puzzling teams this year for me. You look at that roster, and it's by far the most talented roster in that bottom third of the league. No, Chelsea's not quite there yet. They're almost there. But it's by far the most talented roster in the bottom third of the league. So it's just weird seeing them down there. They're a team that at worst I would have thought would have finished 10, 11, 12. They're sitting in 15, not far away from that 10, 11, 12, but they are going to finish comfortably in the bottom half. And looking at that roster and the money that has been spent there over time, it is a little bit puzzling to see where they're at. So yes, the two draws that Arsenal has had back-to-back, one against Liverpool, who, yes, you look at the standings, they're in 8th. But I do think they're another team that I do expect to finish kind of strong here, not quite to the level of City, not because of their thrashing of Leeds yesterday, over the weekend, whatever. But they're, again, just a team that has a lot of talent. They're getting healthy at the right time. So I don't necessarily even consider either of those draws against like poor teams, but they're games that you have to, you got to take 4 points out of those two matches. Win the league, if you are going to win the league. Exactly. Yeah. At least take 4 points. You can have one of the two can be a draw, but you got to take 4 points there. So it was a little bit of a disappointing last week or so if you are an Arsenal fan or somebody pulling for Arsenal to win the league like I have been all year. I've been pretty vocal on this channel about not that I'm an Arsenal fan, not that they're like my second club by any means, but I have been pulling for them for most of the year. So it has been a little bit disappointing for me seeing their kind of somewhat fall from grace. And that might be extreme because it's 2 draws, but
right. As far as West Ham goes, it's kind of a team that showed, if they play like they did in the last 60 minutes or 70 minutes versus Arsenal, they're a team that should comfortably stay up. We've talked about their talent that they have. I mean, they're a top half talented side if they're healthy for the most part. Obviously, David Moyes, he has to go at the end of this year. It's not working with him anymore at West Ham, and I think they'll move on from him and find somebody else in the summer, and they'll likely have to replace Declan Rice in the summer. But I don't think West Ham will end up being relegated, and based on the table, it doesn't appear they will either now. But I think 4 points clear of relegation, so we'll see.
And when you look at their schedule, there's at minimum 2 guaranteed wins left. So even if they lost every other match, which I by no means do, I think they will, they would be sitting at, what would that be, 37 points, and most likely that would put them clear, especially the performances we've seen from some of those bottom 5 teams at this point. Leeds has not looked good lately. Leicester's looked horrendous. So I just don't think there's enough teams that will perform worse than them, despite how much they've underperformed. Like, they're not in danger. You look at the table, you could say they're only 4 points out, but I think something would have to go drastically wrong at this point for them to not survive.
Yeah, right now, they're sitting at 31 points. Typically, I referenced it, probably 5 months ago towards the beginning of the year. The threshold typically is 32 points to stay up. There's only been one team in the last 15 years to get more than 32 points in a year and get relegated, and that was your beloved Toons. So West Ham, I think they're going to be okay. As far as the other teams that are sitting in relegation zone, I think we both said that this is what it would finish as, what we have right now. We've got Forest in 18th, Leicester in 19th, and Southampton in 20th. Is that what we both said?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably where I'm at. The only other, I do think Everton and Leeds could both flirt with relegation, but I have seen nothing from Leicester that leads me to believe that they can perform better than either of those two teams.
Yeah.
Southampton's done. That's a foregone conclusion. I would bet, I would take out a second mortgage, I don't care what the lines are, and bet on them to be relegated at this point. Like, they are going down. I also think Forest it would be very tough for them to not. I would probably put it at like an 85% chance if I'm throwing numbers at the wall to see what sticks. I would give them like an 85% chance of going down. So then it does come down to Leeds, Leicester, Everton, and at this point, I've seen nothing from Leicester that leads me to believe they can outperform those other two by 3 points, 4 points. I believe they'd have to outperform Leeds by 4 or 5 points and Everton by three or 4 points. So I just don't see anything in this Leicester side, despite how talented that roster is, that indicates to me that they could survive, which sucks because I really want Everton to go down. But
the only positive thing that Leicester has going forward is it has the best goal differential out of any of those like last 5. Well, Leeds has a better goal differential, I'm pretty sure. But as far as like Everton goes, if it comes down to Everton and Leicester would get the head-to-head. Forest and Southampton, I think, are likely going to be heading down to the championship. That third team, I think, is the toss-up between three pretty storied teams in Europe. Leicester being more storied because of that year they had, 5 or 6 years ago where they won the league. Another talking point is Bournemouth, who,
they don't stop.
Takes a late winner versus at Spurs this past weekend, and they're
safe,
point,
right?
They're six points safe. Clear. They seem
6
safe,
points,
which is crazy.
Yeah, they're safe.
Yeah,
right. I think going into the season of the newly promoted sides, that was everybody's favorite to go down.
Everybody's favorite.
I know. Thinking back to the early days of our show, that was for sure mine. I almost guaranteed it.
Yeah.
But they've performed well, especially as of late. I think they've won 3 of their last 5. They're not what's weird about them is I don't even know what makes them not bad. Like when I watch them, I'm just never very impressed with anything about that side. Whether it's their formation, whether it's their actual talent on the team, not one game that I've sat down and watched Bournemouth until the Spurs. That relentlessness against Spurs was quite remarkable. But all season, it's just been this very vanilla, very non-exciting side, but they just find a way to get it done. And a lot of times as a promotion team, that's what you're going to have to do. You can be the Forests and go out and spend a ton of money and have the far superior talented roster compared to Bournemouth. But at the end of the day, it is about the 25 men in that locker room week in and week out, and how they're willing to perform together. And Bournemouth has certainly surprised me in that respect.
Yeah, I think Bournemouth is having the exact season that Forest thought they were going to have, kind of sitting in that 13th, 14th zone, not quite super safely staying up, but Bournemouth feels safe at this point. Moving up the table, you touched on Liverpool. I want to talk about the Brighton, Brentford, Fulham trio. Brentford and really Fulham also just on both really, really bad forms. Fulham because of the Mitrovic situation, and then Brentford just, I don't really know. Brentford just, I told you yesterday that I think 9th is based on talent where they probably should be and should end up in the league and all things considered, but it's been a pretty big fall from grace lately, winless in their last 5 in the Premier League. So
I will say they looked phenomenal against Newcastle in the first half. Granted, we looked really poor. Was that a week ago now? We looked really poor, but they did look very solid in the first half. I think they very well could have been up 3-0 going into halftime. Eddie Howe had a masterclass at halftime, and Newcastle looked a different side in the second half. But eye test, they do still kind of excite me at times. I think their form has been a little shocking to me. A loss to Everton last month was not something I would have foreseen. 2-0 to Wolves is not something I would have foreseen. So I do think water's kind of finding its level, for lack of a better term. But I do think they're still a fairly exciting side. I do think Tony's going to be gone in the summer, which will change things drastically there. But they are a side that I do think has a lot of quality pieces in place. They have in my opinion, one of the better goalkeepers in the league as well. Hasn't shown it the last 2-3 weeks, but I do think they have one of the better keepers in the league.
Yeah, he's a heavy Spurs target for the summer, I know, to replace Hugo Lloris. So keep an eye on that. Let's talk Brighton for a second. Brighton really unlucky to get a draw versus Spurs. It could have easily been 3 points, and they've got 2 games in hand over pretty much the rest of the league.
They didn't even get a draw against you guys. You guys won.
Was that 3 weeks ago now? Oh yeah, 2. Tottenham.
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
right.
yeah. It was when I was in Florida, so it was 2 weeks ago.
Dang.
Yeah. You guys won, and I didn't get to watch the game because I was in Florida, but I watched the extended highlights. I don't know how the hell you guys won that game outside of officiating. There were like 4 like borderline egregious decisions that went against Brighton in that match. They looked very, very good. They're a team that I'm not 100% sure on their schedule, what it looks like coming down the stretch. I do know, I know they finish with Villa, which at this point is kind of exciting as somebody kind of competing with both of them, because I think that'll be an
electric game.
That's going to be an absolutely unreal match. It's probably going to be for some sort of European spot. What European spot, I don't know at this point, but it's going to be for a European spot. So I don't know what their full schedule looks like down the stretch, but that's going to be a match that'll be super exciting come that last match week.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at the 3, 4, 5, and 6s, I think Tottenham drops out. I think they'd end up dropping to 7th. I just think they're too much in whatever. Spurs are too much in turmoil right now. Christian Stellini is at odds with Ryan Mason, who's at odds with the board. And go ahead.
So who? Not that I'm disagreeing. Who jumps you? Obviously, I assume we will finish in your world here. We'll finish ahead of you. Brighton and then Villa would be the other one. You think you will hold off Liverpool though? Like I'm not trying to like rain on your parade, but like if you think you could fall to 7th, I think you could fall to 8th very easily.
Yeah, no, I
said very
7th,
easily.
I said 7th more so to display that I think we're going to fall out of Europe, but it could be as far as 8th for sure. I mean, the players just don't care anymore. It's pretty frustrating to watch. You really have to the wins that they're going to get are be wins like Brighton throughout the rest of the year, unless something happens. I don't know, unless Stellini gets relieved of his duties and then Ryan Mason takes over, and the players love Ryan Mason, and if there's some sort of bounce there and they take a game or two that they shouldn't, I don't know. But I see Tottenham in free fall. I see Villa and Brighton obviously completely capable of jumping them, and then Liverpool, I mean, loss, draw, convincing win. You just don't know what Liverpool team you're going to get. I don't know if Dylan can even hear me right now. And then looking at Newcastle,
you are cutting in and out, but I'm still here, kind of.
Man United on pretty good form right now. Newcastle also on pretty good form despite the loss. It could come down either way there. I think it could end up finishing Newcastle 3rd, United 4th. I also think United, with the injuries that they have, could actually fall down into maybe even 5th. We'll just have to see, because Lisandro Martinez is a big injury. Just, the command that he has at the back. And then with City and Arsenal, who knows? City is certainly gaining ground. And, so let us know y'all's thoughts on the Premier League table as it stands right now. We appreciate you guys listening. As always, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, share, comment, duet, and stitch. And we will talk to y'all next time.